Hello, namaste to all of you. I'm going to talk about the future of tourism, and there will be questions at the end of my PowerPoint presentation. And you can submit your questions to the Q&A box, and then we can answer some of them, okay? So that's how we're going to go. Can you see my screen?
Yep, they can, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Right. So the topic today is rebuilding tourism industry in the post-COVID-19 society. My name is Professor Eugenia Wickens. I'm a researcher and an academic, and I've been studying tourism for the last, well, nearly getting on for 30 years. I have taught in several universities, Plato College in Oxford, Oxford University, the new university, the new college, and Oxford Brookes University, Bucks New University, and Malaysia. And of course, I have given guest lectures in Nepal as well. I am a sociologist, that's my background, that was my first degree, and I was really interested in the changes that were taking place in society via the tourism. Anyway, let us start then. Enough about me. As I said, you have invited me to talk about the future of tourism. And we all know it has been several months now since we are all been shut down in our homes, and because social distancing has been imposed by the governments. And social distancing makes us all to live like hermits, like here in the village, although they're not as hermits as we are here in Oxford. COVID-19, of course, brought the industry, the tourism industry, into a standstill. It has had a dramatic impact on air travel and hospitality. So what tourism will look like when the lockdown is almost gone? Wondering when we will next travel? Some of us are skeptical about the industry. Some say it will be back to normal, back to business as usual. But not soon, some of us will say. Optimistic assessments suggest that the sector will not be back to normal until 2021. So what changes shall we expect? First of all, I'll talk about the airport changes. And one of them is going to be enhanced screening. And here I have the two airports well known in Nepal. And of course, this is the main airport that international travelers arrive in Kathmandu. So what sort of things are we expecting? First of all, we are expecting a 2-meter distancing at all times. Some argue it doesn't have to be 2 meters. It can be 1 meter, and others claim 1.5 meters. But this is negotiable. Hand sanitizers. We're all expected to use hand sanitizers when we're at the airports, and these are widely distributed now, not just at the airports, but also in the railway stations and other sort of travel stations. The use, of course, of electronic check-in kiosks at airports is becoming our norm to avoid human interaction. Now, I'm not sure whether Kathmandu Airport is going to introduce the electronic check-in kiosk to avoid human interaction. Perhaps you can tell me at the end of the presentation. Another measure is thermal screening at airports. No in-flight meals, which will make it very difficult, of course, for people traveling long distances, say to Nepal from UK, which is several hours. How are they going to manage? Face masks, now these are going to be mandatory. And of course, minimum use of lavatory. Now, this will be problematic for families with young children if you cannot, use a lavatory during your flight. Okay, advanced airports use, of course, thermal detection screening to look for diseases. And for example, Hong Kong Airport, International Airport, has introduced those. Testing a fully body disinfector, which sanitizes users within 40 seconds. Incredible, isn't it? Using sprays that kill bacteria on skin and clothing. The airport also uses robots, the autonomous cleaning robots, which kill microbes by zapping them with the ultraviolet light. Now, disinfection technology at Hong Kong International Airport. And you can see it here, how technology is changing really the world of travel and tourism. It reduces the risk of the COVID-19 infection spreading amongst passengers and airport staff. Flight attendants are expected now to wear personal protective equipment. Some argue for all passengers should have blood tests taken before they're allowed, of course, into the country, into the destination. So what will it take to get people flying again? Making tourists feeling safe in the confined space of an airplane with new regulations. Flight crew wear personal protective gear like face masks and gloves, and also tourists are expected now to wear a mask. So here are some futuristic predictions. Some argue that we should be able now to travel wherever we like, whenever we like. And that is, you will have to have not just your passport showing where you came from, but the immunity passport, which allows some people to travel wherever they want to, as long as they have COVID-19 antibodies. Now, self-distancing, we're all aware of that, is going to be a feature of everyday life. Until the whole world, of course, has herd immunity or an effective vaccine is found. So what about self-distancing travel and tourism? What does this mean for travel and tourism industry? Are airports likely to be changed in a post-COVID-19 society? And what would it mean then for Nepal? The question that comes to mind is, will passengers want the hassle of flying? And of course, if tourists want to fly, this will be contingent on several factors. Some experts claim that the fares will stay low, so airlines are keen to get customers back on board. They want to be back to business as usual, as normal. Others argue that the disruption will massively hike up the cost of traveling. So would this crisis force struggling airlines to consolidate? Now, there is some evidence that when companies merge, that's what I mean by consolidation here, it translates into bigger expenses for the consumer. What would I mean, of course, could be higher prices. Would this mean fewer passengers for fewer flights? Flights will not be viable unless they have the flight price to cover the additional costs. Could increased prices lead to a reduction in business travel? Now, business travel is quite an important sector, of course, of the tourism industry. So let us take a little bit about them. There is some evidence, some studies show that people may not be so keen now to resume working abroad. So what do you think? What COVID-19 has shown us thus far is that businesses realize how easily it is now to work in a virtual, environment. And a virtual workplace can be created and how effective it is. Now, COVID-19 forced them to look at the future of work, and we'll return about the future employment and the future of education later on this presentation. So let us continue again on business travel. Several companies adapting to Zoom conferencing, like we are today, and other working from home methods. And for instance, Facebook's workforce now, half of it is expected to work from home. Other big companies as well, they're claiming that they're quite happy for their staff to continue working from home. So, is business travel questionable? Some would argue, yes, it is. Business in a post-COVID-19 society. Rapid amount of digital transformation is taking currently place. It will have long-lasting impacts moving forward. It is sustainable and almost certain that the industry will be transformed. But what about travel costs? Airlines have to invest heavily in new safety measures. They need to space out their seating, of course, arrangements on flights. So could that mean you're decreasing the businesses? Increasing prices and high insurance costs could make traveling too expensive for many, many tourists, including, of course, business tourists. Let me talk a little bit now about risk factors in travel. Are tourists willing to take the risk? Some tourists are less risk averse towards, and their attitude to COVID-19 is like, oh, well, I'm okay. I'm a young person. It doesn't affect me. It only impacts the older generation. And those, of course, who have medical conditions, existing medical conditions. Those who believe that they have lower probability of becoming seriously ill, they will travel. Risk factors in travel. Adventure tourists would want to make the most out of their freedom once taken for granted, once they're allowed, of course, to travel overseas. Now, would they travel to destinations such as Nepal? Let us take a look. Risk factors in travel. Hundreds of trekkers were stranded on high altitude trekking trails across Nepal. That was reported in the international media, but the government of Nepal were able, of course, to organize transport for them to bring them back to safety. Now, this is quite an exemplary behavior for the government, and they should be congratulated. Due to a nationwide lockdown designed to contain, of course, the coronavirus spread, a lot of travelers were stranded. Not just the high up in the mountains, who have seen them on cruise ships, on other destinations far away, Brazil, Argentina, Peru, and so on. Risk factors in travel. Tourists are less likely to fly for short breaks. And what I mean by that is 1 to 3 nights. Now, the reasons are enhanced airport measures, which I explained to you at the beginning of this presentation, the potential increases in fares, as I was arguing a few minutes ago, and the 14-day quarantine period with fines for those who break the rules. I have to say this is the case here in the UK, but in some other countries, they may not impose that quarantine period of 14 days. It could be just 1 day or 24 hours. So here are some futuristic predictions from UK. A recent survey reveals that 90% of British travelers want to go on holiday in this country when the lockdown ends. Staycations will boom. Staycation, you may be not familiar with this concept. It's a concept that means that the travelers spend the holidays in the tourist home country. It differs, however, from the domestic tourism because it doesn't always involve air travel or travel for more than 1 day. So tourists may not require, for instance, overnight accommodation. They may travel, say, for the day to experience and to view a stately home or to travel to the lakes and so on. But what about China? I would like to talk a little bit about China because it was, of course, as you know, the first country that was affected by the virus. So what can we learn from China? How travel looks like now after the lockdown. According to a survey, and this is, if I can just point out, this is Hotel Measures survey, and it's not an academic study, but most of the evidence comes from travel agents and tour operators surveys. They show that bookings are picking up. Hotels in several cities are going back to normal operations. Now, in order to encourage people to go back, they give out discounts, which is one way of encouraging travel and tourism. A survey of 15,000 people in China found that 90% would prefer to travel domestically. They're hesitant to travel to international destinations. Now, that's quite an important factor for Nepal because I know that China is a major market for travel and tourism. Now, the reasons given by respondents include the perceived stigma and discrimination. There have been reports that they're labeled as carriers of the deadly virus. And of course, this concern puts them off from traveling overseas. By the way, I have to mention this incredible architectural building, who has become now a major tourist attraction in China. This is the Sheraton Hotel and in Huzhou, and it has got the shape of a horseshoe. So it is called now the Horseshoe Hotel. And as I was saying, it's become a very major tourist attraction, apart from the traditional, buildings in China. International or domestic tourism? That is the question. Pandemic has thrown international domestic tourism out of gear. What I mean by that, it has really impacted them very, very badly. We all know that. Travel bubbles now are recommended to keep parts of the global economy afloat. Now, travel bubble is a very interesting concept. So I would like to concentrate a little bit about what travel bubble means and who has introduced them. Bubbles connect countries that show a level of success in containing the corona pandemic domestically. Travel bubble allow members, of course, to kickstart the economy and, of course, start such as travel and tourism. The arrangements are favored by smaller countries because they're more likely to benefit after being able to trade again with the larger partners. And in this case, Nepal perhaps could introduce a travel bubble with China or a travel bubble with India. And, the world is, I know it's difficult at the moment because I've heard that India has got it very bad, and China, the tourists, they are concerned of traveling abroad, but it can be one solution. Now, international domestic tourism, that is the question. Many are pinning their hopes, of course, on this travel bubble. New Zealand and Australia have installed what is known the Trans-Tasmanian travel bubble, which allows movement across regions, allows perhaps air passengers to travel from New Zealand and Australia and from Australia to New Zealand. In the Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania travel bubble, the residents there and tourists, of course, can travel freely, not just by air, but also by rail and sea without quarantine measures. Now, that is quite important because that could be off-putting actually to many travelers. So, can travel bubbles revive the industry? Could travel bubbles define where tourists go? There are two important questions here to ask, especially for Nepal. Now, travel bubbles are not favored, of course, by several EU countries. In the USA, travel bubbles suggested to group states who are faring well against the pandemic. China and South Korea have launched a fast-track channel for travelers, and some Mediterranean countries are installing screens around sun lounges to promote social distancing among tourists. And I have mentioned social distancing will stay in our post-COVID society for a very long time. It will become a feature of travel and tourism. In the short term, everyone will face much more heightened checks at airports. We all know that. There is no other way, really, of doing things differently. You can't go back to business. These changes, of course, may last for the next few years until, of course, a vaccine is found, and, of course, on how much the global population becomes infected. Because you know the transmission is from human to human. And it's a very clever virus. Once it gets into you, stays there. When the question, whose answer, of course, nobody knows. Even WHO, they are warning that there will be a second wave of this infection, and God help us. This is here an airport that shows a sign here, please keep your distance. So self-distancing traveler tourism would become a feature. But another thing we can say, we all have this desire to travel. The only certainty across, of course, the global world and across travelers is that desire to travel is always there. And it will be particularly more important now that we have been under lockdown for nearly 2 months. Following SARS, Ebola, and terrorism attacks, the industry has always was able to rebound. But so the question is when people will travel, but I can't really say with certainty when people will travel back to Nepal. Now, the desire to travel has always been amongst tourists, and it is a great privilege to travel around the world. We take that for granted now. And of course, it does educate us. We learn a lot about different people, about different cultures, and we see different people, cultures, different religions, and so on. Authentic Nepal. This is one of the reasons people go to Nepal. And I can say that with certainty because I have also carried out research in Nepal, about a few years ago. And I found that authenticity in Nepal was the major motivation for many international travelers. So the future of tourism, what can we tell about it? Rise of Asian middle class. Significant increases in demand for tourism will come from Asia. 2.4 billion people are projected, of course, to join the middle classes by 2030. 90% of them will be Asian by 2030. And of course, 30% of international travelers will come from Asian countries. So what does that mean, therefore, for Nepal? Perhaps we can discuss that later on at the end of our presentation. Another interesting trend is this digitalization. We have now a new generation of tech-savvy travelers who love to travel to exotic destinations, Nepal, Bhutan, Asia, Thailand. They're very popular destinations amongst many Western travelers. There is also an emergence of new technologies. And I will talk about the emergence of new technologies very shortly. The rise of a connected generation, of course, of travelers is a fact. So the future of tourism, what will it look like? Responsible tourism, responsible travel, it will still be there because there is a scarcity of resources on the rise, an increased pace of climate change, and the rapid extinction of many species. The impact of human activities on the planet has been a concern, of course, amongst travelers, young travelers, for a very long time. Sharing economy. The past few years have witnessed an increase in online travel transactions. 30% of market value of top 30 digital companies comes from platforms such as Airbnb, Uber, and HomeAway. Stakeholders need to adapt and offer unique options for travelers. And this, of course, includes the Nepali stakeholders. Authenticity. Authenticity will be a key concern actually for many travelers, because the world is changing so dramatically that they will want to go to destinations, to visit destinations such as Nepal, because they are looking for authentic cultural experiences. But safety is first, and this trend is expected to grow. Namaste. It's a beautiful, smiling Nepali man there. I got this from online picture. I think it's a fantastic picture of what Nepali people, even if they don't know you, they encounter a stranger and they will greet them with a formal greeting, Namaste. Okay, let us continue with the future of tourism. Tourism and sustainability are crucial, of course, for the industry. A renewed sense of community. More people are now mindful and our responsibilities as tourists, of course, when we visit destinations such as Nepal. Evidence shows that tourists reward those companies that collaborate with communities and demonstrate genuine care and respect for local people, culture, and environment. So respectful, mindful people and responsible tourism are part of this sustainability of the industry. Some claim that people will not want to travel. No packing, no airport queues, perhaps virtual tourism. See the world from the comfort of your home. Will it take off? Will people prefer to work and perhaps to countries such as Nepal from the comfort of their own home? New technologies will bring new changes in the tourism industry. Mobile applications providing already information to travelers about coronavirus in Singapore, for instance, and in China, Hong Kong, and other countries. Robots carrying out strenuous jobs such as waitresses, cleaning, and garbage will be replaced, of course, by humans. Intelligent robots may offer services such as greeting, transfer, bellboy services, payment, promotion, on-site guidance, food and beverage orders. And this is becoming a reality. The sector is a digital pioneer, we have to say. The first sector to digitalize business processes, e.g. flight and hotel bookings online, of course, was the industry. Tourism is an adopter of new technologies, and new tourism, of course, goes well with social distancing tourism. Social distancing tourism requires fresh approaches to the reskilling of tourism workforce. Some claim that social distancing tourism will accelerate the de-skilling of the tourism workforce. What I mean by that is the loss of skills, which are important in carrying out your tasks in your jobs. Some examples that include airports, hotels, restaurants. Now, is there any evidence for such a claim and such argumentation? Consumers are constantly connected. So those people who want to travel are constantly connected. Technology can help them. They search for information, they share their experiences on social media, and demand, of course, we mustn't forget, instant gratification. At airports, they have already applied technology which enhances travelers' experiences, introducing biometric technology to identify travelers. So you go through here with your passport, takes your picture, and it is as easy as, piece of cake. Trip, therefore, is frictionless. Now, what happens at hotels? Artificial intelligence allows hotels to offer different experiences. Hoteliers, those who have adopted robots and have replaced human beings with robots, claim that guests have positive memories with their encounters, the robotic encounters. Robots free up, of course, the time of human staff, do they? And of course, they also claim they are ideal for social distancing. People remain at the core of the tourism experience. I'm a bit skeptical of the whole thing, really, because robots depersonalize guests' experiences. There is also an underlying fear that robots will take over the world, and is already taking over the tourism industry. So, how do you better serve a customer? In China, in Japan, in Singapore, luggage carrying robots. How do you better serve customers? We have front desk robots and concierge robots. I believe there have been studies on those, and they show the Japanese love them. And they go to these hotels to stay there because they are robotic hotels, yes? Everything, from the moment of your arrival to the moment you leave the hotel, you are greeted by robots. That's your experience. So it's not a touristic experience, it is a robotic experience. So how robots will reshape hospitality? And here is the future of tourism. These pictures are taken in Pakistan, and we have here robots as chefs cooking pizzas and bread, and robots serving the meal to the customers. So, is this the future of tourism we'd all like to see in the post-COVID society? Robots serving food at restaurants. Technology is powered by artificial intelligence transforming tourism. This transformation is ongoing. However, technology does not change society. It is people with the right attitudes who change society. We can see that there are a lot of things happening in the industry. Trends come and go, and technology plays, however, a growing importance in these trends. We have to remember that. So, are robots taking over the world? Are robots taking over the tourism industry? Facing a world transformed by COVID-19 and technology create different opportunities and different challenges. And this is my conclusion. I'm coming to an end now. Students face questions about their own employment. They need to prepare for the new job market. Much of the work that exists today, I'm sorry to say that, but may not exist in 20 years' time. Can tourism be a force for good? Will the future industry have a greater sense of responsibility and duty of care towards people and the planet? will tourism be better regulated, more democratic, and more accessible to all? These are the questions I cannot answer, but we can answer them together. Thank you very much for listening. I'm ready now to answer some of your questions. Thank you. Any questions? Okay.
If you have any questions, feel free to turn on your microphones and video and participate if you have a question.
I have one question.
Okay, Manisha. Is it Manisha?
Actually, we were just talking about the future tourism and how robot might be ruling over the tourism sector. So in Nepal, most of us are directly or indirectly related to tourism for job. And as you said earlier, robot might be ruling the tourism sector for different purposes like payment, billboy, front desks, promotions, and many more. So do you think it is good as it might take away the job of many people here in Nepal?
Sorry, Manisha, I didn't quite catch all of your questioning. Is it possible for you to repeat some of it because it wasn't quite clear? I think there is a disruption in the sound.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes, I can hear you better now. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, what I was saying is, as you mentioned, that robot might be ruling the tourism sector for different purposes like payment, billboy, front desks, promotions, and many more in our future.
Yes.
So, in context of Nepal, do you think that it is good as it might take away the job of many Nepalese people?
As I said, I'm skeptical about the robots. I do not want to go to a hotel to be served by robots. Yes, to be met by robots and everything done by robots. Now, Nepal is a special case for robots. I know you haven't got them yet, but I don't think Nepal has to worry too much about robots at the moment. I don't think you have plans, the hotels in there, but you have got international chains. So some of the jobs like cleaning may be taken over by robots, but we don't really know for good to say, yes, they will be taken over all the employment. But, this automation is already there, isn't it?
But also, is it a good thing that the robot potentially could take jobs away from the Nepali market? That's a question.
Is it good, you mean?
Yeah, is it a positive thing that jobs could be replaced by robots, do you think?
Not particularly, no, I don't think so, no. Because I have personal concerns about robots, and I don't want to go into conspiracy theories like some people talk about, like the world will be taken over by robots. Oh. And armies of robots will control the population, human population. I don't really want to know anything about that. I have got some concerns because, as I was saying, in advanced developed countries like Japan, which is incredible, people like robots. But there haven't been enough studies to show that who are those people who like robots? Yes. And how many? Do all people like robots? I mean, the population in Nepal is so dispersed, going back to your question, that I don't think you have to worry about so much about robots at the moment. But at the airport in Nepal, they may have to introduce them out of necessity. Yes. Okay, any other questions?
I do have one, Eugenia.
Yeah.
Thank you for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
A couple of years ago, I attended a conference of yours in Hotel Annapurna about the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, I guess. So I have a question about it. One of the goal of SDG aims to end the epidemics of tuberculosis, AIDS, and other tropical diseases, waterborne diseases, along with communicable diseases by 2030. Is it right? And COVID-19 pandemic directly relates to this target. So in what way do we need to urgently act now and be prepared for the future pandemics?
That's a very good question. I'm not a medic, so I cannot really reply to to the aspects of your question concerning the epidemic. But I do agree with those who say the industry should be prepared for new pandemics, or even COVID-19 changes and mutated to something even deadlier disease. And of course, it is also important to remember that it has affected, I think, nearly 5.5 million people, over 1 million in the United States of America. And the United States of America is a big market. It's one of your top markets, I think, for Nepal, isn't it? So it does affect travelers because they are restricted where they go, where they travel. Now, I think technology could help the future of tourism in pandemic situations like this, because although we're still learning about it, it can help them, for instance, at the airports, as I was saying earlier on, or even in the hotels. Out of necessity, you may have to have robots to meet and greet people. It is a hard question anyway. I hope I was able to answer.
Yes, thank you, Eugenia.
Yeah. Any more questions? Okay. Well, since there are no more questions, I would just like to say thank you very much for being here and listening to my talk on the future of tourism. I hope you have learned something out of it. You take something out of it and you find it useful. But I think it will also change colleges, the education, colleges and institutions could also operate from a distance now. Webinars are becoming very popular now, and communication could continue online. Okay, thank you very much. Take care and stay.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Ma'am.
Tanka, thank you very much for this invitation. It's been wonderful to meet you.
Thank you, Eugenia ma'am. I'm very sorry to say in Kathmandu there is heavy rainfall. Today, now it's going on, and more number of students have got the problem in electricity connection.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Have you?
The presentation will be, Tanka, the presentation is being recorded. So what we'll do is we will share it.
Okay, it will be thankful to us. If I get the presentation, I will disseminate to my student. And my voice also not clearly delivering because of the outside heavy noises.
Yes, because it's breaking up every now and then.
It just kind of shows you really the limitations of webinars too at the same time.
Okay, no problem. So thank you very much once again to you all.
Swagatam Day.
It's the great influences in the world. Namaste.
Namaste.
Yeah.
See you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
We'll talk online for the other discussion.
Yes.
Thank you, Eugenia ma'am.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.